Well, my friends, as much as we are worried about what's going to happen in the Seattle mayoral race, it looks like the eyes of the U.S. are not actually looking at Seattle. They're looking at what's going on in New York. Joining us now to discuss, council member on the New York City Council, Councilwoman Inna Vernikov. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Always a pleasure. So we get conflicting reports from the other side of the country. I was just in New York last week, and I've never seen such a mobilization. I mean, I heard the rabbi of the synagogue I was in last week talking about everybody go voting. What's it like in New York right now?
Yeah, I mean, we have never seen turnout like we're seeing now. I can speak for my district. The poll sites in my district during early voting were extremely packed, people standing in lines for hours to vote. Yesterday, I was at one of our busiest poll sites, and the line was out the door. People told us they stood in for hours in the line. And the supervisors told us that that this is larger than presidential election. So it's the turnout's been massive, really massive, unlike anything we've seen before.
Do you think it's part of the problem is that the candidates are who the candidates are? Whereas there's not really that many people for the Republicans to get excited about. There's not really that many people for the moderates to get excited about. But what they are getting worried about is Mamdani. And they're saying, we got to do anything to stop this guy. We don't care who we put in office aside from him.
Yeah, I think there's a mix. I think there's a lot of excitement from Mamdani, from the Mamdani voters, and then I think there's a lot of fear from the anti-Mamdani vote, and I think that's moderate Democrats, independents, Republicans. So it's fear and excitement, and I am hoping that the fear vote is going to take over here because I don't think there's much excitement for Cuomo here. I think he's got a lot of unfavorables, but because Mamdani's on the ticket, the fear of Mamdani administration, I think it scares the living hell out of people. And
Yeah.
so they're coming out to vote in droves against Mamdani. At the same time, there's all this excitement to come out to vote for Mamdani. We saw very long lines in North Brooklyn, which is part of the commie, we call it the corridor. So that's all Mamdani voters. When you look at the demographics of who's voting, it's the younger voters that are definitely mostly going for Mamdani. On the other hand, I know, for example, on the Upper East Side, it's Cuomo country, and because there's a lot of Jewish New Yorkers in the Upper East Side, the younger voters are voting for Mamdani. So it's a big mess.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Now, we know that the Jewish community is turning out in droves to vote against Mamdani, including parts of that community that never show up to voting. And now they're telling people, get buses, do whatever it takes to go vote. You're seeing a lot of rabbis step up, and they don't normally do this kind of stuff. What other communities are stepping up because they're so worried about Mamdani getting elected that don't traditionally show up to the polls?
I mean, what we're seeing here, I represent a large Jewish district, probably the largest Jewish district in New York City. So, like you said, we're seeing a lot of Jews, Orthodox, secular Jews. Everybody's really petrified. Also, Jews from the former Soviet Union. As you know, I'm a Republican and I endorsed Cuomo in the race. I did something very out of the box and different, kind of created some shockwaves. And when I was doing the press conference with Andrew Cuomo, I said that I represent a community that not all of them, but a large number of my constituents are those who came from the former Soviet Union, and they escaped communism and socialism and anti-Semitism, which is exactly what Mamdani is bringing to the plate here. And so they are willing to do anything just to make sure we don't get Mamdani, even if it means voting for somebody who has not been liked at all in our community, which is Andrew Cuomo.
There's something I'm concerned about, and we're talking with Council Member Inna Vernikov from New York City about the upcoming election. What I'm concerned about is I looked at the election results of New York State the last time there was a big election. That was Lee Zeldin versus Kathy Hochul. And you had COVID right before that, and you had something like 400,000 people move out of New York and down to Florida or wherever else. And therefore, you had Zeldin lose by around that much. And I'm worried that if we see another mass exodus out of New York City because Mamdani gets elected, then basically Republicans are surrendering New York City. And I'm worried about us ever winning anything there again, the same way that Republicans have kind of given up on Seattle and King County, which Seattle is in.
Yeah, so if God forbid Mamdani should win, I'm going to be encouraging Republicans to stay in New York because we have a governor's race coming up. And I think that we can win that race, especially if Mamdani is the mayor. And I'm going to be working my butt off to make sure that if it's Elise Stefanik, she's supposed to announce right after the mayoral election that she wins. And I think that there is a pathway for her to win governor. And I think that we can change a lot if she's governor. And that's basically the hope. I'm going to be, if that's the case, Mamdani ends up winning, I'm going to be rallying New Yorkers, especially conservatives, to stay.
Just before we let you go, with Elise Stefanik running, that's somebody who people are excited about. You look at somebody like Kathy Hochul, who just bent the knee to Mamdani and said, I'm going to do whatever this guy does, along with the Democratic Party. Do you think the entire Democratic Party has shifted? Because I think the only reason Chuck Schumer hasn't endorsed Mamdani is because if he does that, there's nothing to stop AOC from challenging him. He's trying to remain the moderate wing. But you see Hakeem Jeffries endorsing Mamdani. You see Hochul endorsing Mamdani. Do you think this is the new Democrat Party in places like New York, where it's the Mamdani Party, the Democrat Socialist Party, not the Democrat Party anymore?
Yeah, I do. I think that, when Hakeem Jeffries endorsed Mamdani, I think that was pretty much it. That kind of set in stone that the Democratic Party is now the Democratic Party of Zohar Mamdani. It is now not the Democratic Party anymore. It is the Democrat Socialist of America, which is AKA communist. And I think that and I think Democrats know this. This is going to create a lot of trouble for them because Republicans are going to use this across the state and across the country. And we're going to win a lot of seats because Zohar Mamdani is now the Democratic Party. This Hamas supporting, refusing to condemn, globalize the Intifada, wants to defund the police, no jails, wants to abolish private property, try to pass legislation that would punish Jewish businesses and synagogues for supporting Israel. And there's so much more. So I think that this is a win, in a way, a win for Republicans.
Councilwoman Inna Vernikov, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for your insight into what's going on in New York. And thank you so much for fighting for traditional American, Republican, conservative values, even in a place like New York. We know what that fight's like here in Seattle. Really appreciate you doing that on behalf of all of us.
Thank you so much for having me.